Good afternoon, everybody. This is Todd DeVille, your host of the Emergency Manager Network, and we're going into a series now, brought to you by Buffalo Computer Graphics, DLAN, discussing just different ideas here in emergency management, policy ideas, and how we can move things forward. And today, one of the things we've noticed a lot, right? We have artificial intelligence and machine learning and all sorts of cool, jazzy stuff like this. And how does it really impact emergency management and decision making? And today I have with me Tim Etherson from Buffalo Computer Graphics and Eric Kant, who are going to discuss. We're going to get a long conversation regarding machine learning and AI. So first, let's bring Eric to the show. Hey, Eric, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me, Todd. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And I'm going to bring Tim in too. And you guys know each other, so I don't have to do any introductions, but we'll do some self-introductions here in a second. So Eric, give me a quick just background on you, because like your background's amazing into what you've done in the past, what you're doing now, and how you're using AI. But just do a quick background so people understand who you are.
Yeah, no worries. And my background has been one of luck and privilege. So I started life as a firefighter paramedic in both New York and Florida, where I ended up having 5 presidentially declared disasters. During that time, the department I was with was very progressive, and we were able to implement a lot of cutting edge software and hardware and processes into the department, even in the mid 90s. I then went on and was lucky enough to be invited to build out the system for 9/11, Katrina, Sandy. During those years is when I met Tim and Buffalo Computer Graphics. Him and I worked on a number of interoperability projects over the years, making command centers interoperable. And the last couple of years, I've been doing decision intelligence work and applying what everyone terms as AI today, but many of us have been working with what you define as AI today for at least a decade.
Yeah, AI is one of those terms that's kind of interesting, kind of I don't say squishy, but for sure, like we talk about Chat GPTs being AI, which it really isn't, but we'll get into that in a minute. Tim, why don't you pop on and say hi to everybody and kind of talk about what you guys are doing.
Thanks, Todd. I'm the director of products at Buffalo Computer Graphics, and we do incident management software. These days, incident management software means a lot of different things. So it really can run the gamut from just doing situational reporting to resource tracking and requesting to trying to build documentation for the next storm or the ones that's currently affecting us. Really, it's a huge area, and AI is becoming a bigger part of all of it as more people want to dig into that information they have and try to use it to make decisions for them.
So I kind of teased a little bit. Thanks, Tim, for that, and thank you for the work that you guys are doing at Buffalo Computer Graphics. I mean, it's one of those programs that I enjoy using when I have to use it. When we talk about AI, we have this misnomer, say the collective we, things like ChatGPT is AI, but it's really not. What is AI exactly, Eric? I mean, let's give that broad brush definition so people don't confuse it with what they think is, a language model type stuff.
Yeah, and if you'd allow me, I'm gonna just to make this easier, share my screen. Hopefully that works for us. I wish I had AI to help me. And there's two things I really want to share here, and I hope you guys can see this. It's important, right? First, I want to talk about AI, how it's being defined by governance, which is really the most important piece. Forget about the technology, the governance piece, and how the government and organizations end up putting guardrails around AI is the definition that we should be using, right? And you can see here, I've got two terms. One is from the White House Executive Order, and one is from the EU Artificial Intelligence Act. And both of them are either broad or close, depending on how you feel, especially the EU one can cover anything from regression algorithms to even lesser type of algorithmic type programs, uh, which has been around for many, many years, right? This is a lot of this is just math. And at the end of the day, these governance terms are really what's going to dictate what you consider or what you should consider AI or not. And it's important to mention that, especially in the EU's rendition of it, if they do include regression algorithms, that can include a lot of products, right? So a lot of things can be jumbled into the AI box today, just because they may use some rudimentary algorithm. Um, that's the governance piece, right? And in the EU, if you look deep into this, there's call outs for not using AI like ChatGPT for large language modules for high risk systems and other elements. So this is really going to dictate in our industry how we can use these programs. The other slide I want to show real quick is from Dirk Z. Give him proper credits. He puts these out. He teaches AI, but this is really a good way to understand the underlying technology structures. All of this is AI. Anytime someone says AI, they can be talking about any of these elements. On the right, you have the machine learning models and the traditional trained and untrained elements, regression models, classifications, but ethics, governments, and then the elements that make it up, neural networks. And so when we talk about ChatGPT or large language modules, depending on what you're doing, it may be using 5 or 6 of these technologies. Natural language processing, for a fact, right? That's how it interprets your questions. Vision analytics, if you're uploading pictures. You get the idea. So when someone says to you AI, and I love when people say they're AI experts, you'll never hear me say that, right? AI, and I forget who said this, I read this somewhere, AI is an ocean, and it truly is. And the best you can do is pilot your way through the ocean as a skilled navigator. But as we're learning, the AI ocean changes every day, and there's a lot to navigate. So unless someone has a PhD in math, they're getting close to an expert, right?
Yeah, I AI is such a crazy. Yeah, you're right about that. Like there is nobody who I would say is an expert. There might be people who are more proficient than others in the use of it, right? But as far as being, because you're learning every day. If you're not learning about this every day, you're behind in the hole there.
You know, it's not even learning every day. The guys who are doing trained and untrained gals, guys, everybody who's doing trained and untrained machine learning are not the same people who are fine tuning a large language model. I mean, these are very nuanced technologies, and people are specialists in
Right.
every one of these little boxes. And that's what you have to be because it is very nuanced and complicated technology. And then let's just roll it back to our business, right? This is now giving us a lot more information, which we don't necessarily do well with today anyway. Right.
Well, let's talk about a couple things here, and I want to go to the language model ChatGPT, for instance, because we had a discussion on Friday. We had about this discussing the idea of like using like a language model specifically to write emergency messages on the fly, and how that's not really a great idea because you need to have the human element in there to make decisions on what to push out. Um, but at the other end of it, though, the language model can help you create a more inclusive. This is my opinion, a more inclusive message because there's the idea of saying, "Hey, go north of the four." I use this a lot as an example. Go north of the 405. If you live in Southern California, even if you live here, you're not really sure what that means. Does that mean you have to go all the way to the top of the 405, or does that mean the geographical north of the 405, or what? So when you do an evacuation order, so using that to vet out mistakes in that language, I think is something that you could use ChatGPT for instance, or other language models. Do you agree with me or disagree with me on that, Eric?
Oh, I completely disagree.
Okay.
if you're using a large language model on the fly to create, let's say, iPause messages, then where were your planning people?
No, we're on the same page there. I was saying,
Yeah,
I was saying, don't use it on the fly. Yeah.
yeah. So let's step back and let's discuss what a large language module is to begin with. And these, what the graphic I have here, I like because it shows the ripples that come out of the large language modules. And you can see the elements, classification, knowledge answering, and then the other products that have now spawned out of that. At its core, they're using statistical methods to guess at the next right answer.
Hmm.
And that's why they hallucinate. When you hear people say, "Oh, my large language model gave me bad answers," it didn't. It gave you an answer based on math. And that's the first thing you need to understand is that that's why people try to ground them all the time, right? To limit their responses. The other thing you need to understand with large language modules is they don't read English. And so what does that mean? They read something called a token, which is 3 characters and a space. And that's what their lexicon is made up of, 3 characters and a space. So when it's guessing as the next word in your sentence, it's only guessing 3 characters in a space every time. So if you think about that, it's not English, it's math, and it's guessing. So there are a lot of things that might be very good for, right? I've got a sample that we'll talk about here in a second, using it as a master exercise practitioner assistant, right? Because you're making up a lot of stuff. It's perfect for those kind of things. Tim is using it in DLAN to help understand and facilitate help files, right? Because I don't have to look up a help file. I can go, hey, this is what I need help with, and it can answer the question. Very good for those kind of items. And I'll show you some samples here. Actually, maybe we can just jump to them real quick. Here's what I was talking about. And just to set the stage a little bit also, we mentioned ChatGPT, which is one of the big ones, Copilot from Microsoft. I'd like you to see how many other ones are out there.
Yeah, a lot.
And some of the really interesting ones are small large language modules that can run, let's say, on the edge, right? But here I'm going to show a couple of examples. We'll run through these fairly quickly. And these are all prototypes. And this is the Emergency Management Planner, GPT. And it's basically a program grounded with the EM planning documentation to help you do planning and analysis. And you'll see here, interesting enough, I even recorded some of the errors because when it's running some of this more sophisticated elements, it's using a lot of different technologies under the covers. So not just the large language module, but virtual machines and code analysis and, as we said, vision analytics. We'll see here in a second. And we can let this run, Todd, as we chat. It'll just continue to pull away. There's 5 or 6 examples here of prototypes using GPT around hazmat response, emergency management. Here's my challenge with all of these. I don't think we're ever going to be able to test these, to use them in a way that would be completely autonomous or completely trusted. Because the basis of the technology is guessing.
Right.
Here's an interesting example. This is grounded with the ERG guide, but it's taking the picture, it's reading the picture, and then giving you what the ERG guide thinks you should do for this response. And we've also connected this to an underlying Esri digital twin. And so you can actually pull in and access your GIS data. All of this was done in about 30 minutes with the no-code, low-code tools that are available out of the box today. The question is, can you test this with enough vigor to know that every answer will be plausible?
And that's a huge point that he made there. When we talk about software like incident management or alerting software and things like that, those go through loads and loads of different types of regression testing and unit testing and different cases and whatnot. It is very, very hard to do a case for this because you could ask the same question 8 times. And because of what it's learning from other things, it could give you 8 different answers. It
Right.
might give you the same answer. It might give you 8 different ones. So the grounding of this and making sure that you limit it to the scope of the type of data you're looking for and things like that become all the more important. You become more data analyzers and data scientists than you are, actual model testers and things like that.
And so, kind of going into this, and so we've already all agreed here, at least on this panel, that you shouldn't be using this on the fly. This should be something that if you're going to utilize it for your planning processes, and maybe for even just checking some language to see if we can make it sound more inclusive when you're looking at directions and things like this. Test it again, making sure you're checking it, and then grounding your information as well. So all those steps need to be taking place prior to just opening up a chat GPT and throwing the information or asking to do a question, because you get some wild answers when you do that.
And Todd, just so you know, you can actually set temperature and flavor and all sorts of things that people don't realize. So when you're just throwing that into ChatGPT, it's using the least restrictive kind of answer. That's why if you notice at the bottom of GPT, there's a refresh button.
Mm-hmm.
That refresh button is basically saying, no, I don't like it. Guess again.
Right.
Right. And so that really is the epitome of the underlying technology. So is that the most appropriate for what we want to do? Just because it's the shiny silver bullet that everyone is lodged onto now, because AI is the new buzzword. Everyone's an AI expert. Everyone's got AI as part of their solution set. It's unless you can talk about it, I'm not sure what they're doing, right?
I want to note this really quick, and this is a conversation that we've been having, and I really find it interesting that with colleges, for instance, using ChatGPT or AI or language models specifically, there's a lot of colleges like, okay, we're going to outlaw this. We're just going to make it, you can't use it, and they turn it in has a thing where you can check to see how much is AI and whatnot, right? I find that kind of interesting, but there are other, and oddly enough, in the Ivy League, you're seeing some of the elite universities actually going through and teaching how to use language models and AI to do research and to help as almost like a research assistant. And now we're talking about being, guessing, even though you could ground it and stuff like this. Is AI, or I should say, is the language models good for doing research and for setting things up for, like, say, exercises and training, like we're talking about just a second ago? Is that where we can see it really being used well in decision making and emergency management?
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we do decision making here in a little bit. But Todd, it is a perfect tool as an assistant as long as it's not your subject matter expert, whatever the subject is. Right? I don't care what the subject is, as long as you're not relying on it to tell you the absolute right answer.
Gotcha. Right.
So unless you're a subject matter expert, you won't know that it's hallucinating, because some of the answers are pretty good. You go, hey, that sounds plausible. Look, that one lawyer put in his brief, and it had 5 or 6 sites in it that didn't even exist because the program hallucinated. The subject matter expert needs to review what the probabilistic engine is making up, if that's what you're using.
If you ever want to do something for fun, take the time and send it to everybody. Go into ChatGPT, put a little bit of information about yourself, maybe even pull up from your LinkedIn or whatever, and have it write a CV about you, and it'll tell you did some amazing stuff, by the way. Yeah, I mean, like, you may have been president of the United States at some point if you look at this thing correctly. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see where it pulls information out of, or at least make stuff up, I guess, or hallucinate, as we call it.
And that's super important, because if you don't know where the source of that data is and you're making decisions on it, then you could get yourself in real trouble, right? You think it's giving you a legal answer on how you should proceed in a situation, and really it just looked at the internet and got a whole bunch of articles for you that really had nothing to do with anything you were looking into,
right?
Managing an emergency or anything else.
So Eric, how do we move from this is a cool tool that can help us do some things to actually using AI to make decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where my work has been focused with the company I'm working with today, Forecast. A great group of guys. I've been with them for 3 years now, and they really taught me the error of some of my ways because they have so decision intelligence is a process. I've actually got a couple of slides here that'll help us out. It's a process that was developed to augment artificial intelligence. So early on, engineers realized that AI does not make decisions. AI provides you better information, maybe more information. Before we get too far away from the large language modules, there are other aspects of that that are usable. Like I built a prototype EEI extractor that'll extract essential elements of information and then put it into a database for you as you're communicating. So when you start to think about the base components of a large language module, you can have it do other things, especially when you access the API in other programs. And we can have a second deeper chat about that if we will. But what's even more interesting is that decision intelligence is essentially a framework for using multiple AIs. And that's where AI and large language modules are going. The AI assistant route, you'll see thousands and thousands of AI assistants. And then the question is, how do you make that useful uh, for making decisions? And so the commercial sector started with decision intelligence as a framework to bring up better insights into your decision making. And it starts with modeling and contextually framing everything you're doing. And so we even use decision intelligence to help us determine how to apply AI to operations, right? Because it's a process of evaluating complex decisions. And AI in your organization, how you're going to use that is probably one of the most complex conversations you're going to have because you're going to spend a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort. And if it doesn't go well or gives you really erroneous responses, it can be a very challenging type of technology to implement. And it requires a lot of specialists. So we start with a discovery process. We create decision intelligence models. And the last time Tim and I did this presentation, we asked how many people even understood their decision making process in their organization, and very few did. So adding AI to that will not make that easier. And I'm going to give a quick example here of how we apply this DI modeling process to multiple AIs, right? All the ones we talked about, machine learning, trained and untrained, large language modules, put them all together. And what you end up with is the ability to now take all that information and categorize it. So if you see here in this sample that I'm showing you, uh, in the sample here, this decision intelligence, oh, excuse me, let me let that play from the beginning. This decision intelligence component, excuse me, we'll try that again. This decision intelligence component is here giving you recommendations on the right-hand side on how to solve your problems from multiple AIs. And so how are we doing that? Give this 1 second to scroll through because we also, now that we've got all our decisions in one system, we can process that through multiple algorithms to understand where you're having issues, where your gaps may be. And again, we're surfacing up information on how to solve your problems. And one of the things we can do once we have this model properly is actually run simulations. So right here, we've got the workforce model, we've got the operation model, and we're actually just able to simulate an evacuation and bring back multiple courses of action based on all of the parameters of our operation.
And I think what Eric touched on there is really key for really any piece of software, but I think AI maybe even more so. You know, people buy an incident management platform, and you know, whether they're using tickets or forms or whatever jargon you have for the stuff they're sending around, when they receive something on that system, they say, well, what do I do with it? But if you take the system away and you go back to what would you do on paper, or if someone gave you a phone call, what's your next step there? That's often already the black hole. They put their hands up in the air and they say, I don't know. So unless you can accurately model, what the steps from A to B to C are to do a resource request, to manage an alert, to send one piece of equipment from point A to point B, unless you can model that out and show what those steps are, it makes it very, very difficult to go any further with other pieces of software.
What's interesting is in the book Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman, I think is the name of the author, if I remember. Yes, that's who it is. He inherently says that decision making, humans, we're pretty poor at making, or at least predictive, right? Where we think we're predicting stuff, we're really bad at that, and making decisions based upon what we are predicted or we're predicting. We're terrible, and these guys go way back into post World War II. Looking at people choosing jet pilots and all sorts of stuff. So he's got a lot of history on making these decisions. So I think a model like this, and I think, and this again, my opinion here, that every emergency manager, anybody who's working in the crisis arena should already have a decision model based like this, so it can help you get to the decision faster. So that being said, when you're building these models out, does AI help you build these models out, number one, and number two, does it help you get to the decision faster? I guess that's like the end of the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because underlying in all of this, and I'm actually showing you right here how we put together, and this is a small operation. And what we have is our core components for our National Guard soldiers, our firefighters, so that when we bring them into a simulation, we understand their metrics. And then here in our operational model, you can literally take each element and connect it to the underlying data source. And you're literally seeing a transparent artificial intelligence model right in front of you right here. And what makes it transparent is that you can fill in all the parameters like tags and thresholds and calculations. And we literally hook this up to thousands of data sources. And then each one of them comes back to give you your deficiencies. And so we can very quickly here open up the elements and get what it recommends we should solve this with, because also in the model is your policies and doctrine. I foregoed a quick slide, but it's worth showing how our particular system works and how we apply AI to understanding the gaps and providing recommendations. This is not a large language model. This is, traditional AI, if you want to call it that.
So let me ask you just a technical question. I know with like ChatGPT, you can upload a document, a PDF document. It'll be able to read it and make decisions based upon, but it's basically grounding it, right? So that
it's not making decisions. It can read that document and then it's going to make guesses based on that document now, incorporated into its flow. Unless you're doing fine tuning and putting that document into the base model, it's always augmenting. That's why one of the techniques they call is RAG, to ground your models, retrieval augmented, I forget the last term, but essentially you can ground your models with documents, but it's still guessing, right? It's basically taking a paragraph from your document and now weaving it into the guess.
So is that what this type of thing is doing with AI? Okay, thank you.
No. We don't use any. We use predictive modeling, not the modeling that large language modules use, which is basically guessing, right? Because it's running an algorithm and it says these next tokens are the most probable match, and then it keeps doing that token by token.
Okay.
And I've got a really good example. We keep going back to the large language module, and I know that seems to be where a lot of people are at. And I'm going to just cover 2 slides here real quick that we went past. One, here's the retrieval augmented generation we can talk to. There's a lot of variants to this. They use vector or graph databases, so 2 different databases than we normally come in contact with, like with our other systems. And then there's a bunch of tools out there, LangChange, Llama Index. And 2 of the ones I actually like the best are Chain of Thought Reasoning and Auto GPT, which is very interesting. You can download that and give it 5 instructions and it does everything automatically. Again, all of this is not predictive. This is guessing. It's deterministic. It's a different technology, and you have to understand how that technology works to know best to where to apply it.
So when we're looking again, let's bring this back to the decision-making conversation. When someone, whoever, is out there going, okay, I need this tool. I want this tool to be able to help me make decisions during a crisis, not for planning, not for just during a crisis. They're just looking for information coming in because, before these models came out, I mean, we're at best maybe 30% of the information that we have out there coming towards us, right? Like, we might have a good weather model coming in saying, hey, we have, let's use those tornadoes that we've had this last week. Okay, we have tornadoes coming. Nobody knows where they're going to land, what they're going to do. And all of a sudden you say, okay, we have a tornado hitting down in whatever location. Now you have to make decisions on sending assets to there, even though we know more storms are coming. Can something like this help us make those decisions quicker, faster, and better?
But not a large language model.
No. I'm talking about.
Yeah. There's absolutely, that's why you got to define AI, right?
Right.
So you wouldn't want to use a large language module for something like that because those are not finite variables and you don't have to guess. We have a lot of information today that we don't process very well. How many agencies, Tim, you've been doing this as long as I have. I don't think in all the years I had incident management systems, how many people actually go back and analyze their past data?
Oh my goodness. That's the biggest question every time it comes back. We had a storm in 87. How is this storm going to be like that? Those people aren't here anymore. They all want to know the answer to it. And nobody's gone back and looked at it until the storm hits. And by then you're looking through reams of stuff, right?
By the way, Todd, you don't need AI to do that. You need someone to open up a database and read a list.
Right.
I mean, let's be honest here. A lot of the stuff we do, AI is just not appropriate for because the overhead's not appropriate.
Right.
Right.
Well, I mean, we can get into this all day long regarding, we don't learn from our, as Craig Fugate said, was it lessons learned and not implemented are just lessons observed, and we've done that, and when during COVID, when everybody's like, oh, no one could have predicted this, we're like, oh yeah, we could. We've all said it was going to come. So
if you do decision intelligence modeling, you have one element make it back into your model. You've just closed the loop for the first time, right? Because we use modeling instead of planning, right? Planners should be modeling, not writing 27 book plans. They write a model, and then I can apply that model to my operation. That's the way I believe the industry should be going.
Yeah.
If I do that properly, then now I have a model that I can take to all these other places and help uplift people. But you got to start with the model. So this is what I've learned working with Forecast, and the CEO I know will appreciate this because he beats me in the head with it endlessly. I come from where Tim came from, right? Common operating pictures. Take all your data, put it into the picture, see what you got. No, you'll never solve a problem like that because you don't know what you're solving for. You only know what you might have in some data sources. The model, if you're missing data, it'll tell you. If you don't have the data, it'll tell you because you modeled your decision process. And then you can start to apply the appropriate AIs to each element in your process. Maybe I need a logistics algorithm here. Maybe I do need a large language module there, but you may weigh them differently in your decision model, right? So large language modules and AI don't make decisions.
Right.
The engineers who built this created decision intelligence to help make AI useful to making decisions, because they even realize it doesn't make decisions. Just gives you more information.
And that's a great point, Eric, to point this out, because I think that we're seeing and I'm not trying to pick on the next generation of emergency managers coming behind us, but I think we're seeing people looking at this as a solution to a problem that you're still going to have at some point. A human's going to have to take a look at the situation and make a decision to act, whatever that would be.
Listen, if you're still using WebEOC, don't even look at AI, because you're so far behind the times, it doesn't matter. So, if you're not using something like Buffalo Computer Graphics, who's keeping up to date and processing information the way it's supposed to be here in this future, you're using stuff that's 20 years old. That was 20 years ago. No one's updated it. How do I know? Look at them. I mean, it's obvious, right? How are we here, Todd, in 2024, and we're not interoperable? I know Tim and I are interoperable. We spent years doing it.
Right.
Other vendors didn't. So, still got some of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen everything, as it's coming and moving forward, and I think you're right. I mean, everything should be interoperable, and the other side of it too is we need to, and this is, I'm going to be on a soapbox here for a second because I can. We need more. I got a helicopter flying over me. If you guys hear that, I don't know what's going on, but we need to have more people, more emergency managers. We're looking at these things and working together on these things. And I'm gonna mute myself for 1 second because I think this is getting close.
Yeah, I think Eric has made a bunch of really good points on a lot of this. I mean, ultimately, I think people are bad at analyzing all the information they already got. And when you have another tool that's giving you information, it's very easy to point at the tool and be like, well, that must be the expert. Why? Because it's doing all this AI stuff that I don't understand under the box. It's really just, in the end, more information. It's what you do with that information that can help you. And if you don't properly process what's coming in, just like you would, anyone else. I mean, a general's got a bunch of commanders to help them make decisions, right? This is just one more, call it staff member or tool in your pocket to help you get there. But if you're using it to actually make that end decision, you better be very careful what type of decisions you're making.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is, at the end of the day, the field that we're in, that we're all passionate about here, is about making decisions in a timely manner that are going to impact, potentially millions of people's lives. So if not hundreds of thousands, up to millions of people, depending on what jurisdiction you're in. I mean, and again, going back to what we're seeing here in the, oh my gosh, I don't know how many states it's over now. I think it's like 6 states that these tornadoes have hit. The decisions that people are making today are going to impact those people for the rest of their lives. So I'm glad that the work that you guys are doing, Eric and Tim, thank you so much for that and making it easier for us, as those of us that are, trying to make decisions in a timely fashion. And I live in the WUI, and so the helicopter flying around in my neighborhood kind of makes me feel nervous, especially since it's fire weather. But so if you guys hear this, I'm going to mute again. Eric, why don't you let us know how we can get in contact with you and how we can find out more information about what you're working on.
Yeah, I'd like to just cover one other thing. All those samples, Todd, that I showed, not one of them took more than 20 minutes to knock together. Don't be enamored by what people have and they're showing you, because trust me, it's easier than you think, but operationalizing what I knocked together in 30 minutes will probably take quite a bit of time. One of the last components I wanted to share with you, because I believe that this is one of the key pieces in the decision-making process that we haven't hit yet. So in our decision intelligence work, almost a third of our work ends up being augmenting training, right? Because we can buy a lot of stuff, a lot of equipment, but we don't always train that well. We've actually been modeling the workforce using VR training, and each one of these trainings has different metrics that actually roll up so that when we do those other simulations that I showed you, you're actually taking your workforce with you into the simulation. And you've modeled the workforce using multiple metrics, if you see here on the left, including soft and hard skills. Right, and this is what we do essentially for military units today: model their workforce, model their workflows, and then find deficiencies in the operations with recommendations on how to solve them. To me, that's the most practical way in our business to apply AI, because each one of those elements, you can then quantify what the important piece is. And that being said, you can always find me on LinkedIn and places like that.
Thank you, Eric. Tim, well, I mean, I know we're going to be doing this for next few times here, but what's BCG working on, and what are the new things that you can share with us today?
In the AI space, Eric talked about it a little bit already. We're definitely trying to be careful where we bring this in, because there's a lot of policy-related things you can run into with regards to privacy and law enforcement data and health enforcement data, or healthcare data, things like that. So for us, it's starting with our help system, trying to help you get through that quicker when you have something you need to work on. Internally, we're using it to help us, respond to customer support requests, helping us to build out RFPs and responses to those, helping us internally for a lot of internal documents, all with the idea being that we vet that afterwards, because we've seen it do some crazy stuff. So we're definitely staying on it using those models. But as Eric said, you can build a lot of these things in 15, 20 minutes, but does that actually do what you want it to do? And there's a lot of data sets you got to try to look at to bring in and clean up. And going back to that 87 ice storm, example I had in there, not everything was formatted in anything that might have been useful to actually put AI around. So there's a lot of steps, I think, that we're all going to be working on as we get there. Hopefully we do it together a little bit more. We're able to take stuff from the Esris and the Web EOCs and Everbridges and DLANs and all those other companies out there. And we've all got a piece of the data and a piece of the puzzle. How can we share that information in a way that can help us, do better work?
Yeah, the 87 ice storm was one of the reasons why I live in California now, because I remember that well. Man, excuse me. I gotta say one thing though. Those of us that are in this field, we need to really start looking at these models. And Eric, I love what you said about we should be writing these 47 chapter, 250 page, operations plans. We should be looking at modeling and how we can input stuff into that and make it work. When we look at what the National Weather Service is doing with their predictive analysis and their modeling specifically for weather, I think we should take a hint on that as emergency managers and really work that way on things as well, because the information by the time we write a emergency operations plan, which is 5-6 years old, by the time we have to open it, the information has changed and is no longer relevant. So I love that.
You can model a lot of different aspects. In Ireland, we modeled the pandemic, and then they had a ransomware attack of all their hospitals, and modeled the ransomware attack, and then combined those models. Here in the States, we did diversity, equity, and inclusion, so that you had a DEI lens in your model. So when you're planning, decision intelligence is made for complex plans, and then understanding them with real-time data. That's the crux, or AI, whatever you want to call it, dude. Right? Marketing.
Right. AI is definitely the buzzword of the day. Well. If anybody has any questions, please reach out to Eric and to Tim and to see how they can help you out with the future of emergency management and how we can use predictive decision making in your daily basis. So Tim and Eric, I appreciate your time. Stand by for 1 minute, and we'll talk in a second. Hey everybody! Again, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to bring in great information and great speakers when we're discussing what it is to do emergency management and to do it in a more effective way. So until next time, please everybody, Stay safe,